The SpongeBob Movie is a film defined by its big icons. The Krusty Krab 2, Plan Z, Goofy Goober, Shell City, The Paddy Wagon, David Hasselhoff, and of course, Neptune's Crown. All these elements serve one major purpose: to elevate the movie above your average episode. Making a film based on a TV show world poses a difficult challenge because you have to craft a meaningful and powerful story without disrupting what we know about the world we're familiar with. With all the different kinds of stories you can tell within the world of SpongeBob, the story that they chose for the first movie is one that perfectly translates a show that usually just has short little 11-minute episodes into a full-on feature-length experience worthy of being the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Chapter 1: The Foundation. The movie opens on a live-action pirate ship. This meta-sequence shows us a pirate crew discovering a treasure chest which contains tickets to the SpongeBob Movie! While this opening does not have any story significance, it is important because it frames our expectations of the movie as something bigger than the average SpongeBob episode. It communicates this movie is a treasure. It's worth bursting into the theater the way that these pirates do. As a kid, I remember there was one thing I felt like the pirate scene was missing: Patchy. But upon growing up and rewatching the film, I've come to realize why the president of the SpongeBob fan club was absent. See, Patchy, I love the guy, but he's a TV show character. His costume, his speaking style, his tone, he's really well suited for presenting TV specials. But have him present the movie, and I don't think it would have had the same weight to it. We needed these movie pirates. Their costume, the set pieces, and the music all scream high-budget film, and that set our expectations just as much as the pirates' behavior did. But the thing I respect the most about this pirate opening is just how bold it is to open a movie basically by saying, hey, this movie is gonna be like super awesome. Look how excited these guys are. That's how you should feel. And like, if you're gonna do that, you need to stick the landing, which the SpongeBob movie absolutely did. Chapter 2: Establishing Theme. The real movie starts with immediate action. This tense criminal investigation-esque scene is juxtaposed by the actual conflict. A customer didn't get cheese on his Krabby Patty. While the concept of an incorrect fast food order warranting such a reaction is silly, the scene has a much deeper purpose beyond being funny. See, this is all a dream sequence that shows SpongeBob's fantasy as the Krusty Krab manager. It shows us the exact kind of person he wants to be seen as: competent, in charge, but still within the confines of the comically mundane Krusty Krab. This inner desire of self-worth is built upon when we learn SpongeBob's main want in the movie: to become the manager of the Krusty Krab 2. Before we get into the manager motivation, let's talk a little bit about this Krusty Krab 2. The Krusty Krab is the most prominent setting in the entire series, and the heart of what makes SpongeBob unique as a cartoon series. The cartoon world of SpongeBob has a lot of wacky stuff happen, from retired superheroes to invisible spray to Flying Dutchman to literal gods, but at the heart of all of it, SpongeBob is just a guy who's content flipping burgers at the Krusty Krab. So throughout this whole journey, with all the trials and tribulations and monsters, the real thing our protagonist wants is to just be in charge of a little fast food chain. By adding a Krusty Krab 2, this movie gives us a sense that things are different. Things are going to change. Things are bigger. Of course, once the show continued into season 4 post-movie, the Krusty Krab 2 never remained. But in the context of the movie alone, the Krusty Krab 2 does make us feel a major shift in the status quo of this world. So SpongeBob goes through many early scenes all but sure he's going to be chosen as manager, only for it to be announced that the job will be going to Squidward. After the announcement, Mr. Krabs has this really candid fatherly advice chat with SpongeBob about how, to be a manager, you have to be a man. And this sets up the true inner conflict that SpongeBob faces throughout the film. This choice on the part of the writers of SpongeBob's character arc revolving around his sense of whether or not he is too childish of a person or not was the perfect choice for a feature-length story that takes place within this universe. In many episodes of the show, SpongeBob is a pretty childish guy, and his childlike qualities, while they often drive the plot of episodes, there's never a moment in the show, like there is in the movie, where someone says right to SpongeBob's face, hey, the way you are, maybe you should reevaluate. And of course, the story revolves around SpongeBob proving Krabs wrong, and that it's okay to be a kid, but the very fact that the core tenet of SpongeBob's character is the thing that is challenged throughout the film is what makes this not just a movie that happens to have SpongeBob characters in it, but the SpongeBob movie. Movie. In the main series, SpongeBob's childlike nature is shown through a lot of different things, such as jellyfishing, blowing bubbles, his interest in Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, but instead of showing SpongeBob's childishness through any of these things, the film decides to introduce a new concept to represent SpongeBob's kiddie side, Goofy Goober. So Goofy Goobers is kind of like this Chuck E. Cheese-esque restaurant that revolves around this big peanut guy called Goofy Goober. So Goofy Goober is not only the name of this fictional kiddie franchise, but it is also what you are called if you are a fan of the Dancing Peanut Man. So when the term Goofy Goober is tossed around throughout the movie, it can either be in reference to the Goofy Goober franchise itself or a reference to SpongeBob and Patrick as being kid-like. Goofy Goober is foundational to the emotional thread of the SpongeBob movie, and SpongeBob's shaky identity as a Goofy Goober drives his character arc. Chapter 3: Establishing Stakes. So now that we know the emotional stakes of the SpongeBob movie, let's talk about the literal stakes. The villain of the SpongeBob movie is Plankton. In Plankton's introductory scene, he shows envy of Mr. Krabs' success, wishing he could have that success for himself. This is actually kind of a parallel to SpongeBob, as both SpongeBob and Plankton wish that they were someone that they are not, with SpongeBob wishing he were seen as more of a man, and Plankton being seen as more of a success. Sometimes in movies based on TV shows, they'll have their villain be an original character, but having Plankton, a character we already know as the villain of the main show, be the villain of the movie allows the movie to escalate Plankton's usual brand of evil scheme. The way the SpongeBob movie shows us this isn't your average Plankton plot is through the establishment of Plan Z, Plankton's final and most diabolical plan. Plan Z involves framing Mr. Krabs for the crime of stealing King Neptune's crown so that Plankton can steal the Krabby Patty formula. While that's already an escalation from Plankton's usual attempts at the formula, the SpongeBob movie reveals something else about Plankton. It tells us what he actually wants to do with the Krabby Patty formula. See, Plankton doesn't just want to take the formula to have a successful restaurant. Instead, he uses the popularity of the Krabby Patty to take over and enslave the Bikini Bottom population. So, much like how SpongeBob overcompensates for his perceived lack of manhood by going on the journey to get Neptune's crown, Plankton overcompensates for his lack of success and attention by enslaving the town's population. They both probably could have just gone to therapy, but then, well, we wouldn't have a movie, would we? So let's chat about King Neptune, who, despite only appearing in the show once at this point, has been elevated to one of the main characters of the movie, along with his daughter Mindy, who is a brand new character introduced for the movie. Neptune in the movie is basically a completely different character than he was in the episode Neptune's Spatula. So for the purposes of this video, I'll consider him an independent character, though it is possible they could be the same guy after losing his abs and hair. So King Neptune is a typical bad ruler type of character. He's petty, overly cruel, and just all around insecure. His insecurities mostly derive from the fact that his hair is, as he puts it, thinning. I also see this as a parallel to SpongeBob's arc. After all, a man having hair is often a symbol of him being manly. So Neptune feels less manly because he's bald, so he overcompensates by executing people. Yikes! This guy might be more evil than Plankton. So because Neptune believes that Krabs stole his crown, he threatens to execute him unless SpongeBob retrieves his crown from a place called Shell City in 6 days. Why 6 days? Well, it was supposed to be 10 days, but then
We can do it in 9, 8, 7, 6.
Other than being funny, Patrick lowering the day count puts the heroes on a pretty strict clock to get this crown back. 10 days would have been too much, but 6 days would have sounded random, so by having this joke in there, it makes the timeline make narrative sense. Now let's talk a little bit about what Shell City and Neptune's crown represent. Shell City is referred to as a forbidden city, and the way that the characters talk about it gives it this dark mythology. But at this point in the film, we also don't have much info on what Shell City is, or the true reason why it's so dangerous, other than one element, a Cyclops. So by having both the audience and SpongeBob have the exact same knowledge of what Shell City is, it succeeds in being a mysterious place. And when it is revealed what Shell City is, it being a gift shop in the human world that sells dried out sea creatures, it delivers on the promise of a terrifying place in an interesting and creative way. As for Neptune's crown, the crown is, according to Neptune, the symbol of Neptune's king-like authority. But according to Mindy, it's only only purpose is to cover his bald spot. With these two contradicting purposes, we can extrapolate that the crown represents a hollow attempt at giving yourself a higher sense of importance. And that is not only true for Neptune, but it's true for SpongeBob too, as in SpongeBob's mind, getting this crown and bringing it back to Bikini Bottom proves himself as a man, just as it proves to the world that Neptune is a worthy ruler and not bald. Chapter 4: The Journey. The bulk of the runtime of the movie revolves around SpongeBob and Patrick's journey to retrieve King Neptune's crown. I want to address Patrick's presence here, or more so, the lack of Squidward and Sandy's presence. It's a common criticism of the first SpongeBob movie that these two characters got a little bit sidelined. Squidward, at the very least, plays a pretty significant role in the movie, mostly in the sense that he represents the mature person that SpongeBob isn't when he is given the manager job, and he also gets a pretty significant sequence towards the middle of the movie where he witnesses Plankton's takeover. Sandy, however, is basically a background character, and I get why people are kind of disappointed that the SpongeBob movie, which should be a definitive representation of the series, all but ignores one of its most major characters entirely. With all this in mind, I still think that Patrick was the perfect choice for SpongeBob's companion on this adventure. For one, Patrick is as childish as SpongeBob is, so during the scenes like the bubble party and Now That We're Men, they both share the same childlike qualities that SpongeBob is attempting to leave behind. If Sandy or Squidward were with them, not only would the scenes feel a little too crowded with all of them trying to get a line in, but they just wouldn't be relevant to SpongeBob's character arc the way Patrick is. Patrick also works so much better as a sidekick to SpongeBob. In most Squidward or Sandy focused episodes, the focus of the story ends up usually more on Squidward or Sandy than it does on SpongeBob. But Patrick, while sometimes having episodes focused entirely around him, usually acts as a support to SpongeBob. And since the movie is focused on a SpongeBob character arc, Patrick was the best choice for companion. So from the moment SpongeBob and Patrick leave Bikini Bottom to the point where they arrive in Shell City, they face 3 unfamiliar places with 3 specific threats, and each of these threats challenge SpongeBob's perception of himself as a man. The first stop on the journey is the Thug Tug, a rough and tough bar that SpongeBob and Patrick visit to take back the key from the guy who stole the paddy wagon. SpongeBob and Patrick get a unique test at the Thug Tug after a bubble that SpongeBob and Patrick made in the bathroom is discovered by the CEO of Tough Guys. Since this guy doesn't know who blew the bubble, SpongeBob, Patrick, and every other tough guy have to stand and listen to the Goofy Goober theme song. And, if they sing along, they will be beaten senseless by every able-bodied patron in the bar. This is the 3rd time we hear the Goofy Goober theme song in the movie. It comes back again 2 more times after this for different narrative reasons, making a total of 5 Goofy Goober songs throughout the movie, all of which carry their own narrative weight. The first Goofy Goober song establishes the concept of Goofy Goobers and is sung joyously by SpongeBob while he still thinks he has the manager job in the bag. The second Goofy Goober song plays directly after his rejection from the manager job, juxtaposing his sadness, and this 3rd time it's played here in the Thug Tug is when SpongeBob is actively repressing his Goofy Goober identity, with the symbolism of the Goofy Goober lineup being how difficult it is to act like someone you aren't. SpongeBob and Patrick succeed at not singing the song because at the last second, another tough guy patron, or 2 guys, they have 2 heads for some reason, sings the Goofy Goober song, leading to them getting beaten up, showing that even tough guys might be Goofy Goobers. The second stop on the journey is this place filled with skulls and bones, which raises the stakes. In the Thug Tug, sure, SpongeBob and Patrick were at risk of getting beaten up. Now the risks are far more lethal. Similar to how SpongeBob and Patrick fall to the temptation of bubbles in the Thug Tug bathroom, this time they fall to the temptation of ice cream, and this time it almost cost them their lives and does cost them the paddy wagon. After losing the paddy wagon and seeing the danger of the trench that lies before them, SpongeBob is nearly brought to giving up on his journey, accepting, in a bad way, that he is a Goofy Goober. Now, this is kind of interesting in the scope of the whole story, because SpongeBob's character arc is about him accepting that he is a Goofy Goober. So why is him accepting he's a Goofy Goober here such a bad thing? Well, this scene and the final scene both represent 2 different kinds of ways of accepting who you are, with the pre-trench acceptance being, I'm a Goofy Goober and that's bad, and the post-Shell City acceptance being, I'm a Goofy Goober and that's okay. Meaning it doesn't matter if SpongeBob accepts he's a Goofy Goober if he doesn't also accept himself in the process. Then Mindy shows up and gives SpongeBob and Patrick fake mustaches, which tricks them into thinking they're men. While this gives SpongeBob and Patrick the confidence they need to get through the trench, it's a false confidence, as when Dennis removes their mustaches and reveals they weren't men, it breaks them. Up until this point, SpongeBob's character journey goes through a series of ups and downs where he grapples with the possibility that he could overcome being a Goofy Goober, which leads him to the emotional low point of the story. Chapter 5: Shell City and the Crown. When SpongeBob and Patrick are put under a heat lamp to be turned into a cheap novelty, the worst fate they could possibly have met on this journey, they realize that they, in fact, made it to Shell City and found Neptune's crown. This realization, coming right after Dennis revealed they never became men, inspires SpongeBob and teaches him that he got this far while still being who he is at his core.
We did all right for a couple of goofballs.
And he expresses this through singing the Goofy Goober theme song. If you were ever wondering why this scene always felt particularly emotional, this is why. The scene is so emotional, in fact, that the movie actually cuts away to its fictional audience, the pirates, and shows them crying at this scene. Again, such a bold choice, and it shows how confident the filmmakers were that they were crafting a truly great narrative. They were literally like, this scene is so sad, we have to cut away to what the audience should be feeling. And if we didn't feel that way, this moment would fall completely flat. But since the scene does such a good job at delivering on that emotional weight, we feel the same way the pirates do. The tear of the Goofy Goober ends up being the thing that saves SpongeBob and Patrick as it trips the fire alarm, which saves SpongeBob, Patrick, and all the other novelty fish in Shell City. This is significant as it's the very spirit of being childlike, represented as the tear of the Goofy Goober, that saves both the lives of the main characters and saves the essence of who they are. Then we get to the way in which SpongeBob and Patrick get back to Bikini Bottom, David Hasselhoff. So even though David Hasselhoff is a pretty manly celebrity, the movie doesn't actually tie him into SpongeBob's arc of wanting to become a man. He's just kind of a regular celebrity cameo. I only noticed this because, fun fact, in the SpongeBob Movie GBA game, there are a bunch of lines where SpongeBob is like, "Wow, David Hasselhoff, you're so manly," which made me think about how they don't really say anything like that in the movie. Which, by the way, you should check out my video on the SpongeBob Movie GBA game and the question of whether or not it was a faithful adaptation. Link in the description. Anyway, while Hasselhoff doesn't tie into SpongeBob's arc, his presence in the SpongeBob movie still enhances the overall film. First off, it's pretty funny. Even as a kid who didn't really know who David Hasselhoff was, I could read the scene as, oh, this is like some famous person, probably because I noticed my parents' reaction to the scene. The reason Hasselhoff being a funny reference is significant is because we are just coming off a highly emotional scene. And oftentimes when a film has a particularly emotional scene, they usually need a particularly funny scene to follow it, and Hasselhoff accomplishes this perfectly. Also, as a celebrity cameo, he elevates the film by reminding us, well, that it is a film and not just a regular episode. See, I know nowadays the celebrity cameo is rightly despised as just a cynical way to up the prestige of a certain movie, but when a movie like this, that already has such a strong foundation, has just one celebrity cameo placed just right, it can work really well. And just before returning to Bikini Bottom, there is one last confrontation with Dennis. Of the two Dennis confrontations, one happens before Shell City and one happens after. And this is important because Dennis is the figure that cuts through to SpongeBob's emotional core and breaks down his perception of himself as a man. But now that he's accepted himself because of his experience in Shell City, Dennis doesn't shake his foundation as much. Now, while SpongeBob is still no match physically for someone like Dennis, because of his new sense of confidence, he's able to stall out the fight using childish things like bubbles and goober dollars until a boat knocks Dennis right out of the movie. Chapter 6: Becoming a Manager. In the final confrontation of the film, Plankton takes over King Neptune with one of his bucket helmets. I always loved SpongeBob's reaction to this.
Plankton cheated.
It's just such a raw and honest reaction to someone behaving that way, especially because, as I said earlier, SpongeBob and Plankton are both characters who overcompensate for their perceived shortcomings. But while SpongeBob maturely overcame those shortcomings on his journey of self-discovery, Plankton did all this evil stuff. I just love Plankton's reaction to being told he cheated. Like, it just cuts him to his core. He's got no rebuttal, but you're a stupid kid. But since SpongeBob has gone through his character arc and accepted his childlike qualities, that insult has no weight to him, and instead inspires the fifth and final instance of the Goofy Goober song, a rock reprise where SpongeBob uses the power of the Goofy Goober to free the town from Plankton's influence. To round out the conclusion of the movie, SpongeBob is offered the management position at the Krusty Krab 2, completing his hero's journey of returning home and getting what he wants after having changed. Right at the end, Squidward has this little moment where he says how perhaps SpongeBob didn't really want what he thought he wanted, to which SpongeBob is like, nah, of course I want to be manager, also your fly is down even though you don't wear pants. I really like this because it kind of subverts what a lot of stories like this might be. There could be a version of this story where SpongeBob doesn't become the manager, where he accepts Squidward as a quote-unquote better choice, but that wouldn't have worked for this story, because the point of this story is that you can do all the kiddie things you like and still be successful. And even at the end, when someone is like, like, yeah, maybe you should accept that you're not management material, like Squidward says, you could be like, nope, I'll take that too. It's an inspiring lesson, saying that you can be who you are and what you want, and you don't have to compromise. I haven't seen the first SpongeBob movie in probably almost a decade. I rewatched it to make this video, and right now, the film resonated with me more than it ever did when I watched it as a kid, because of what I've been doing with this channel. Like, I'm a goofy goober. I'm trying to make a living talking about cartoons on the internet and also video games too. Check out my other channel. But while I'm a goofy goober, I'm also, like SpongeBob, trying to be a manager, taking things really seriously, checking metrics, trying to capture the most out of my audience, all while making sure that I stay authentically myself. That's what the SpongeBob movie means to me. What does it mean to you? Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, I've got a Patreon, or you can become a channel member. Also, make sure to check out that SpongeBob movie game analysis on my gaming channel. See you next time.